Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight here on Christmas Eve is Reverend Emma Chattin of the Metropolitan Community Church of Northern Virginia. Thank you so much for being here, Emma.
Thank you for having me here.
So you actually wear two hats.
I do.
You wear two hats because you actually back decades ago took over an existing organization, the Transgender Education Association of Greater Washington, and kind of shepherded it to what it is today.
Well, it actually wasn't decades ago. In 2015, the organization was going to close. And that's when I approached the board and said, let me address the board, because they were all elected for the purpose of closing the organization. And I told them, I said, I think that you have a Ferrari parked in your garage, and I don't think that you've taken it to the end of your driveway. Let me borrow the keys. And let me take it for a spin, and if I have any problems, I'll bring it back to you with the same amount of gas in the tank. And they voted not to end the organization.
Because it was founded in 1982.
It was, and it was very different.
I can imagine, because I'm trying to think of what people knew about transgender at all in 1982. That was kind of bold to even name the organization that in 1982.
It was, and there was some secrecy around it. They did social organizations, they had places, there was a large membership of heterosexual cross-dressers that would come and dress, and you couldn't even know where the meetings were. You had to contact somebody and be interviewed before you would know where the meetings were. And they didn't publicize very greatly. So it was a very different organization, and it had kind of served its purpose.
You know, the television show Transparent, and some people may have seen that show, it was surprisingly successful right from its first season. But one of the things from that show are sort of his flashback memories of something similar.
Yes.
How men like him would connect with other men in these very highly closed, very secret, and it sounds very similar to this. So it sounds like that was a very realistic sort of flashback.
That was a realistic depiction. Even that area of the country, the Poconos. I mean, there were people within our organization and our community that would go off to those. So that was a very realistic depiction. And sometimes it's a journey. Sometimes it's a journey for individuals, and they discover that they need to transition, that this is who they are. And it actually reaches a point where it's do or die, and that's usually kind of what happens. And so the organization kind of existed within that bubble, and I felt that there was so much more that they could do.
Well, you've had a very interesting journey of your own. We discovered that you and I are from the same area of Southwest Virginia.
We are.
See, isn't that amazing? We kind of grew up in parallel lives, not that far from each other.
That's correct.
And so your father was a Methodist minister.
He was.
And so we should not be surprised, actually, that you had a calling and decided to follow in those footsteps. But your journey was different.
It was. I gave my first sermon when I was 15 or 16. Although my dad says I gave my first sermon when I was 2 years old. There's a photograph of me pointing to my mother and pointing to heaven. And Dad said that was my first sermon. So, but my first sermon in front of people, a congregation, was when I was 15 or 16. And so I did feel the calling. And I went off to Ferrum College, and I took pre-seminary classes. And then I discovered how the Methodist Church felt about people like me, and I promptly changed my major. I did what most college students do when they don't know what to do. I changed my major to psychology.
There are a lot of psychology majors out there, but you know, it's one of those things that benefits you in almost every aspect of anything you'll ever do in life.
It will never get in your way. That's the important thing.
So you ended up at James Madison University.
I did. I graduated Ferrum, went to James Madison University, majored again in psychology, and loved the area down there. And I said, this is beautiful. Being a preacher's kid, we moved every 4 years. And so this was an opportunity for me, and I said, I think I'll stay a while. And a while turned into about 18 years.
And considering, because I know that area of the country very well, Harrisonburg is quite cosmopolitan.
It is.
For Southwest Virginia.
It is. It's an island.
Yeah. And so it must have been, to find your community there must have been much easier than it would have been in other places in Virginia.
It was. It was. It was not perfect, though. I went to the organization, the Shenandoah Valley Gay and Lesbian Organization, which had just formed, and I was just trying to discover myself, and find out if I could be a member of that. So, there were pockets of liberalism, and you didn't have to drive far, and it got to be difficult.
And then you ended up in Northern Virginia.
I did. I said that I would. Dad had opportunities to move to Northern Virginia when he was a minister. Even some of the Methodist churches up here, Dad didn't want to because it was too much traffic. I inherited that. I said, I will never, ever live in Northern Virginia, ever, ever. And then I met Heather, who was from Northern Virginia. So whenever you say you'll never do something, the universe goes, I can fix that.
That's right.
And so that's what happened. So I met Heather, and her opportunities were much better up here. So I moved up here, I think, in 1997.
It's interesting. I like to say that sometimes you find your life's calling, and sometimes your life's calling finds you. The proximity of you being in Northern Virginia has created a lot of opportunities for you to do amazing work, both through the Metropolitan Community Church, but also through the Transgender Education Association. And a lot of people might have a question mark about how religion works with something that many people are going to, right off the top of their head, say is so controversial, so misunderstood.
I don't understand how it doesn't work, okay? And that's the way it is for me. Because for me, creation is an amazing thing. One of the sermons that I do when I do preaching at churches to help them open up their congregations is diversity by God, inclusivity is up to us. And I begin by talking about the duck-billed platypus and all of these amazing creations. And if we think individuals who change their sex midlife are really unusual, we should look at the damselfish or the clownfish or any of these things in nature. Creation is far stranger than we can possibly imagine. And it's God's creation. It's the divine creation. I think we can even look at the Bible and how often people are compared to sheep. Okay, it's not a good comparison. I don't think it's kind to sheep. But actually within sheep, there's something that every farm kid knows. About 8% of the rams will only mate with other rams.
There you go. Explain that one.
Exactly. And so that's the way that it is. So we see these things within nature. It's just the thing that I have a problem with is when individuals have an opinion generated by society, their societal opinion, and they try to use religious justification for it. The Bible is not the place on which to stand. As a matter of fact, if we look at Genesis 1:26, 1:27, in our image, male and female, let us make them. My God is totally trans. My God is genderqueer. My God is gender non-binary. And from my perspective, we've misgendered the deity. We've made this deity a male, but that's not what we have. That's not what we have. So from the very beginning, Genesis, I see the Bible as being that open story for us to learn from.
But religion is often misused, and the Bible is often misused by people, and I will just say many conservative evangelical people who wield the words of the Bible as a weapon to say all of this is wrong.
It is, and it's not the Bible. It's not the Bible. The Bible is just like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build something. You can use it to tear it apart. What matters most is the hand that wields it. It is the same with the Bible. What matters most is the hands in which it sits, and the heart in which it is, because you can find anything in the Bible. The Bible can be used and has been used as justification for slavery.
That is true. And you had a wonderful quote about the literal nature of the Bible, that we shouldn't take the literal words.
I take the Bible too seriously to take it literally. And I think that that's very important. If we begin to get locked into this kind of literalism, then we begin to lose the beauty of the stories and what they have to teach us, even metaphorically. Even if we look at the Christmas story, which to me is beautiful, it's a celebration of the incarnation coming onto earth. And it's not 2,000 years ago. The incarnation is in us. It is in us in how we actually become midwives to bringing divinity onto earth. To me, that's the beauty of Christmas. It is not 2,000 years ago. It's not that celebration. It's what we do with it now in order to be the hands and feet of the divine on earth.
You say that so beautifully, and yet we were also talking about the fact that Christmas is a very hard time of the year for people who are struggling, who are in marginalized populations, who are estranged from their family. And we often forget that there's a lot of people for which the holidays are an extra stressor. It's not the joy of celebration that many of us experience.
Not even close, not even close. Painful origin stories of their families, painful stories of them living their authentic self and being completely disowned by their families. Trying to go home during Thanksgiving and Christmas and discovering these as being places of warfare, not places of
so we drowned the
warmth.
fire.
Yep.
You know, and I think that is so hard, and we do forget that. You know, one of the things that you do so well here is you collaborate with so many other organizations. You know, around the Christmas season, I mean, do you see that there are organizations who do more outreach to people who might be in jeopardy at this time of the year?
There are some, and reaching out to the individuals who are alone, who are lonely, and also trying to show them that there's a different way. You know, there are many individuals who will form their communities in bars and places like that. And as long as there's community building, that's the important thing that happens. But people need to be reached out to all year round, and so that's the other thing that happens. This Christmas spirit invades, and then a few weeks later, where is it? And that's why we have to maintain kind of that place in our heart all year round.
Well, you're right, and I hear that from other nonprofits too. It's about, you know, food insecurity. You know, people are so generous at the holidays. I mean, there's this wonderful spirit, toys for tots and meals for families that you know, that are struggling. But come January, February, March, the same need still exists. Over the summertime, the same need still exists.
So some of what that is why we're doing it. Are we giving to make ourselves feel good, or are we giving to make someone else feel good? If we really focus on giving to make someone else feel good, then we focus on doing that year round. Sometimes at Christmas, it's just giving to make ourselves feel good.
Well, and I agree with you, and it's so funny. It's kind of like whether you give an annual donation or you're a monthly sustaining donor. Perhaps we should all be monthly sustaining donors instead of just expending all of our generosity and charity and thoughtfulness in 1 month of the year.
Well said. Well said.
Well, you know, again, it's that time of the year, and I know people want to feel good, and we do want to feel generous. And why we give has to do more with us, oftentimes, than it does in the people we're giving to. So, when we come back from this break, we will be talking with Reverend Emma Chattin. She is the pastor at Metropolitan Community Church here in Northern Virginia. And now that we are looking forward to celebrating Christmas Day, let's see how we can do it differently.
My twin brother Jacob has an autism spectrum disorder. I remember one moment after being at school all day, I remember him getting into the car just bawling and saying, "Mom, I have no friends. Why don't I have any friends?" It broke my heart. That was the moment when I realized that I needed to do something about this. I needed to make a difference in his life. And I knew that if I could help him find a friend, I could help teach other people that including people with differences is the right thing to do. That was the inspiration behind my nonprofit, Score a Friend. Educating people to include people with differences is so important because when Jacob's included, he feels like he can succeed in life and he feels like he actually has a purpose.
So how was work?
It was 1,300 hours. My math class from 302 was in the trenches. Davy Roth had it the worst. Fractions were coming at him left and right. He just didn't get the damn things. 2 days ago, I tried to teach him what 1/4 of 1/2 was using different sizes of blocks. Yesterday, I tried again by dividing up pizza. Both missions failed.
Oh no.
But today, I was ready. I created a combat math game where the only way to beat the enemy is to out-fraction them. Davy conquered every last denominator. My game was so successful, the principal is deploying it to math squadrons all over the school.
Anywho, how was your day?
Oh, today my boss treated the office to salad wraps.
Salad wraps.
I know.
we're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop, our Christmas Eve show. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Reverend Emma Chattin. She is the pastor at Metropolitan Community Church here in Northern Virginia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to mention, because I often remind people that I sit on the board of Equality Virginia and have for I think the last 6 or 7 years, that you were given the honor as an outstanding Virginian earlier this year in April of 2018 for the work that you have done for a long time in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Very much deserved, because you have done so much for so many, including the things that you have done with our school system, working with Robert Rigby, who's also he was an outstanding Virginian as well. You've done a lot of work in collaboration with existing. You're at Pride every year. You did a pop-up with Equality Virginia. There was a Ties pop-up in Winchester. You were part of that. Tell me a little bit about some of the ways in which you are collaborating and the different kinds of organizations.
Oh, there are lots of organizations. Equality Virginia has been wonderful, and that experience of being an outstanding Virginian was interesting. My first impulse was to refuse it.
Because you don't like to be in the limelight?
I do not. I don't. And so I sought out the wisdom of a former outstanding Virginian who is even more humble than I, Robert Rigby. And I sought him out, and he said, I can understand that. And he said, but you have to realize you're receiving this on behalf of the people you serve.
Yes.
And if you can bring attention to your issues, then that's the reason to do it. And he said the downsides are it'll take you away from your work. It's a distraction. It will cost you money, which it does. But focus on that. And I did. And it was a wonderful experience, life-changing. The people I met there.
Right. There's 1,000 people at that dinner every year. And I always try to bring people who've never been to the dinner before for that very reason.
Oh, it was totally amazing. And there was the woman there who has started the Nations program, enrichment. And I was very nervous going up to the stage. And I wanted to go up with my wife and couldn't. And I was nervous, and she knew I was. And she reached out and grabbed hold of my hand, and we walked up to the stage hand in hand.
That's wonderful.
And I told her she made all the difference in the world to me, because then I was relaxed and I could do it. So it was good, but it was also a reminder of working with other organizations, because to me that's a very important part. Whether it's industry, employers, whether it's government work, whether it is hospitals. One of the things that I kind of became involved in, we had an individual in our community who had been at risk for self-harm and went into a hospital and emerged more at risk than when they went in, because they had been misgendered. And that really moved me. And along about the same time, I was contacted by the California Hospital Association to come out and speak on how to treat trans patients. And it was a wonderful experience. And my opening line was, before you consider how you treat trans patients, consider how you treat trans people as people before you can treat them as patients. One of the things that happened out there, his name was Kyler Prescott. He entered a San Diego hospital at risk of self-harm, and he was misgendered, and he emerged from the hospital just a few months prior to his 15th birthday and beginning hormones, testosterone, to transition into a male. He committed suicide. And so there was a lawsuit pending when I was out there. And I said the consequences for not doing this right, and I showed his face. So I brought that back here and began working with area hospitals to make sure that we properly gender the people that are in the hospital, that we treat them properly, that we use the pronouns that they need to have. Because not using the correct pronouns is the quickest way to cause somebody that kind of distress. So we work with area hospitals, and we do so regularly. We do so with employers who have individuals and workers who are transitioning, who don't know where else to go. How do we do this? How do we manage bathrooms? How do we do pronouns? We go on site, we do educational programs, we bring people with stories, and that's just a few of the organizations that we work with. Basically, if you want to be educated, if you want to learn more, contact us. We will work with you.
And I think that's so important. You mentioned the harm done by misgendering people.
Yes.
You know, here in Virginia, to my astonishment and surprise, a French teacher was terminated. His employment was terminated in West Point. And because he refused to appropriately gender one of his students.
That's
and
correct.
The principal counseled him on it and warned him about it, and ultimately he was fired, and the school board supported the termination. Have we turned a little bit of a corner here? I mean, to me, that surprised me very much that in Virginia, which is more conservative a state than many people understand, that the school board in a fairly rural place would support that.
It is. I think that's a little ray of hope, especially when you look back at Gavin Grimm and when you look back at what happened there and you look at how the school board handled and still continues to handle that. And that's in Gloucester, Virginia. I think that we're beginning to evolve. I think if that happened again even there, I think we might be looking at different outcomes. But it doesn't mean that it is ever easy or ever over. But I think that we're beginning to reach kind of a tipping point. But that's when we're most vulnerable, I think.
I think working in the school setting, though, because young people are the future in so many ways, and they are so much more comfortable because students are feeling more comfortable to come out and be their authentic selves. The nation's eyes are upon Stafford County. Again, another kind of high-profile case of a child who was left in a hallway during an active shooter drill because it was a transgender student. The nation's attention was suddenly focused on Stafford County, and Stafford County School Board is now struggling to put into place some sort of policies. But I would point out that even the venerated Fairfax County public school system is also struggling with the same things. But to put energy, focus, and resources in the school system, I think long-term has a tremendous payoff.
It's essential because the kids are already there. The kids are already there. Policies are needed. Fairfax County Public Schools has long been a leader. Even if you look back at previous things, Fairfax County Public Schools has been a leader. There are other districts that are watching Fairfax County Public Schools. What happened in Stafford was horrible. It was horrific. And that was one of the things that began to move people, because it was something that, how could that possibly happen? How could we be so cruel and heartless not to see this is an issue of safety? How could we not do this? So that, I think, moved them forward, I think, years than they would have done otherwise. So sometimes, in the worst possible situations, we can resurrect really positive outcomes out of it. And so I think that was a good example of it. But I think that we need to continue to move forward, and that's why I go to the Fairfax County Public School Board meetings.
I know you. I see you there. and God bless Robert Rigby, because he is the one who organizes through FCPS Pride, organizing parents to come when it's appropriate. Or my children long since left school. I was an FCPS parent, but he organizes people to come and to show support and to stand with those who, and I love the fact that the students are empowered to speak for themselves.
Absolutely. That's the important thing, and that's the thing that we're seeing shift. Probably a couple of years ago, it was me speaking and a couple of other adults speaking. Now we're getting some of the kids speaking more, and that's important. And FCPS Pride, wonderful organization. We talk back and forth with them. We have modest funds, but we support them. And that's one of the things that I always look around. We are a very modestly, our budget is just very small. But we look at the other little organizations where $50 makes a big difference. When FCPS Pride is having their picnic, we donate $50 so that they can have things, and that makes a big deal for them. There's another organization that is exploring individuals living in rural environments that transition. I believe it's called Gender Discovery, and we sent them $150. So we look at organizations where we can make a big impact with a small amount of money. To me, that's exciting. That's the reason why I do what I do.
And you've got wonderful collaborators and allies like Roxanne Edwards and Chea Mohanty, and you've got people who've pitched in and work alongside with you. And I have met them, and I've seen their presentations as well. The fact that Chea's had a child who transitioned, you know, she was one of those parents, and she will say, I mean, her story is wonderful, and it's like, you know, you go along and you raise your child and feed them and clothe them and do all the appropriate things, and then you're hit with, you know, trying to embrace something with which you are wholly unfamiliar and unprepared.
Exactly. And where do you go? Now, Chaya is wonderful. Now, I look at individuals who have a lot of energy but no outlet, and I'm saying, hey, this is a vehicle through which you can work. Now, I remember the first time I met Chaya because she was looking for answers and things. We had just started our parents group, Parents for Trans Kids, and we had maybe 6 or 8 women there. And their first meeting almost spent entirely in tears, because they can't believe that they're not alone. And this is huge. And for me, I believe connecting people is very important. And that's how Playgroup came about. Playgroup is something that is very innovative, unique, and it doesn't exist anyplace else. And I met the person, very talented, very gifted, and I knew that she could do a lot, and brought her onto the board of TGEA. And within a few months, she had started Playgroup, which is for kids that are trans and gender non-binary, 5 to 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
And they get a chance just to play and be themselves, while their parents can go off and talk and communicate. TGEA supports this, and we do this with dollars. Metropolitan Community Church of Northern Virginia supports this with dollars, as does the UU Congregation of Fairfax.
Yes.
So we all three together support this with dollars, and it doesn't exist anyplace else. Those dollars go toward paying childcare, certified childcare, snacks, treats, things for them to play with, because all they want to do is play and be themselves.
They just want to be themselves.
So this is an opportunity to do this, and it doesn't exist anyplace else. And she was one of the ones that birthed it. And this organization was just a midwife. And to me, again, that's exciting. So I look for people who have vision and dreams and want to do things, and maybe give them the vehicle by which to do that.
Right, and I would just throw out Reverend David Miller of the
Yes,
UUCF, because I've had him on the show before too.
Yes.
And he is another wonderful ally, because the UUs are very much supportive of programs like this. This is one of the reasons they exist, to support social justice programs, and he's been marvelous, very marvelous, and very supportive. When we come back, we will also talk about the proclamation from Fairfax City, which is where I live.
Me too.
and was how proud I was of our mayor, David Meyer, for doing that. I think it says something about the community in which we live.
It does.
So please join us after this break when we come back, and we'll be talking with Reverend Emma Chattin.
So there you are, shuffling through a stack of resumes, and you come to mine. This is it, first impression, my way in. But can my resume show you how I truly stand out? Like that I was studying, going to night school while working 2 jobs just to help my parents pay for groceries. Or being the first one to always step up. No, that's something you just can't put on paper. Look beyond the resume and discover new ways to develop great talent that is dedicated, hardworking, and determined like me.
I surrender.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, good.
French fries. Finding best potatoes.
No!
Russet. Fingerling. Yukon Bowl.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Here on our Christmas Eve program, we are talking with Reverend Emma Chattin of the Metropolitan Community Church. Thank you so much for being here. So we were talking about how you are working in collaboration with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fairfax.
Yes, and has MCC pastors. When we go into places to plant churches, we're often told, go to the UUs, because they will let you meet there. Because we're looking for meeting spaces. Churches will not let you meet. I've been to places where, can we use your facility on Sunday night for our church service? No. As soon as they find out that our outreach is not only for the GLBT communities, that we are the GLBT communities, they don't want to. UUs will say, yes, you can use our facility. So I have long had a relationship with UUs. I preach at the Harrisonburg UU on a regular basis. Oh, wow. They're a lay-led congregation. We formed a relationship over 10 years ago, and they generally have me down to speak anywhere from 3 to 6 times a year. And I love it. I love it, and I love the connection there. And the UU congregation of Fairfax with David, Reverend David there, when the Transgender Day of Remembrance outgrew its space at MCC Nova, we went to the UU congregation and they said, yes, we will help, we will donate the facility, the people to help run the audio and visual, and we've had it there for probably about the past 3 or 4 years with a maximum attendance, I think 1 year of, about 135 people, which on a weeknight in Northern Virginia
is amazing.
Not bad.
Amazing. And that's November 20th.
It is November 20th.
And this year was the 18th anniversary?
In terms of national, yes. Although we've been doing it in Northern Virginia for 10 years. It was our 10th year. 10 years ago, I said, Northern Virginia needs to have a Transgender Day of Remembrance, even just once.
And explain for people who are not familiar with that, why do we have that service?
The reason it's important is that's when the trans community comes together and remembers the individuals who were murdered over the past year due to anti-trans violence and transphobia. The murders are horrific. An individual is not just shot once, they're shot 12 times. They're stabbed, they're dismembered. There's a lot of anger there. And the vast majority of individuals are inner city trans women of color. If you look at the faces on the program from this year, they are all inner city trans women of color, with the exception of one who is a trans man of color. So it's important to remember these, to raise awareness. Some of these individuals may not even have a funeral or a memorial service. Wow. So this is the way of doing it. This past year, I believe there were 23 that were murdered. We light candles, we say their names, and we remember them in front of the whole community. And it's an opportunity for us to come together and do that. So 10 years ago, I said we need to have it at least once.
Right.
And we have had it every year since then because it's important and because we didn't have one then and we didn't know what it was. And now we have one, and now we're starting to have people get conversational on it and understand it. And it's important that individuals, again, who are cisgender or non-transgender to come, because this is an opportunity for them to learn and to take that back out into their community.
You know, I think it's hard for people who are just now getting accustomed to hearing the term transgender. And, you know, and some of that has been like, first, transgender military members were supported, and then that was rolled back, and so suddenly it's in the headlines a lot, and so people are getting used to the term. I think it's more familiar, but there are people who are gender non-conforming, gender fluid, gender non-binary, and I think this is much harder for people to grasp, and yet they are still all part of this community.
Yes. Yes, the community is very broad. Now, the vast majority of individuals, whether they are non-transgender or transgender, are binary. They will generally identify as either male or female, as man or woman. But there are also individuals who are gender non-binary or gender fluid, whether static or dynamic. And these are also within the umbrella of the community as well. And like any community, when you have individuals that are different, there's tensions even within the community, which to me fascinates me. But we make space for that, and we do so by also educating our own people as to what it means in terms of being gender non-binary, which we see and we work with on a regular basis.
You know, and I think it is very hard, and I've had people on the show who prefer they, them, and theirs as their pronouns, and we spoke briefly about using pronouns and how people are misgendered because they are being addressed by the wrong pronoun. And so it is very hard for people to get accustomed to referring to someone as them, you know?
Well, it's hard for people to understand because they're firmly anchored, okay? They're born with that. They have that. When individuals don't have that, it's very hard for people to understand that until it enters their own family. I have known people who are like, I can't get this, and then they discover that their child identifies as gender non-binary, and then they have a lot to learn in a short period of time. When one individual in a family transitions, the whole family transitions, and so we see that as well. But again, that's something that we're emerging in terms of awareness, but not in terms of existence. All through history, trans people and gender non-binary have existed. Just didn't have names for them, didn't know what to call. But this is not something new. What is new is our awareness, thank goodness.
So let's talk a little bit about the workplace. This is another place, you know, people who are running businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, or large corporations. Again, they have people among their employees who may be GLBT, or they might be gender non-binary, they might be in a position of transitioning. I like to point out that the time to have a good policy is before someone asks you if you have one.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Although most of the time when the people come to us, it's because
someone's asked, right? What is your policy?
Or someone's transitioning. Right. And how do we do this? How do we handle bathrooms? How do we do this? And sometimes we'll meet with the management individually, alone first, and then we'll meet with other folks in the company, and we'll look at expanding that outward. But you know, largely it's simple. It's not as complicated as people make it. In terms of bathrooms, you know, what do we do? You don't need to make huge changes. You can simply make changes on the signage that simply says this bathroom is for individuals who identify as women. That's fine. You can also have bathrooms that are, this bathroom is gender neutral.
Right. I'm seeing more and more of those, and especially at conventions and conferences too. You see gender neutral restrooms. Everybody adapts. It's pretty easy, really.
And it's also very family friendly because you have individuals who have kids that they have to take in. Fathers taking their daughters in, daughters taking their mothers taking their sons in. So you have a lot of that in terms of family-friendly bathrooms. So I mean, I think that we're beginning to have some of those conversations on things that we buried. We just don't talk about that, which to me is always bad sign.
Really, because I think, you know, one of the reasons that Amazon HQ2 chose Northern Virginia, they also chose Queens, New York, but they were looking for a place where a diverse population of employees would feel comfortable. I mean, they're also looking for housing and education and that sort of thing. But acceptance of people who are diverse on many levels is important to companies who are looking to attract top talent.
It's essential because they have many employees who may be trans, gender non-binary, and they need to make sure that they move into an area that is not only friendly but conversant, that understands the challenges. We did an educational outreach with the Arlington County Manager's Office, and that was wonderful. They also did a recognition of November 20th as being the Transgender Day of Remembrance. Our organizational president, Sarah Huggins, was there when they did the proclamation. So we work with municipalities to make sure that we are more open, and this just helps us to be continue to be more economically robust.
And so we were talking about the fact that David Meyer, and I think this was the third year that a proclamation was issued in Fairfax City. The county has been doing it for years. John Faust, for probably 8 years, has always issued a proclamation in June about it being, Pride Month. And so David Meyer did this, and I think this was his second year doing it, and you accepted that proclamation. You were there. Mm-hmm. And you know, why is that important for these municipalities to designate and proclaim that all are welcome here?
Well, because people see it, and because people on the council see it. And one of the things that Fairfax did, of course, they did the recognition about Pride Month, and we were there for that as well. But a few months earlier, in March, and I believe it was March 31st, Fairfax City recognized March 31st as Transgender Day of Visibility. Now, that's huge, because even that's separate from Pride.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it was a big deal. And so I've got a picture of the mayor handing that proclamation to me. It also makes a statement to individuals living in the city and in the county, makes them feel at home. It makes them feel that there is a place for me, that my government actually sees me. And that's important, because otherwise it's easy to feel that nobody cares. And this makes that statement, so it is important.
So tell me a little bit too about your work with mental health organizations, because this is, because when you're in a marginalized population of people, there are other kinds of stressors.
Well, what we're looking at in terms of the trans community, we're looking at a suicide rate that is just absolutely horrible. The suicide attempt rate for individuals in the trans and gender non-binary communities is about 41%. Now, if you compare that with the general pop, which is just kind of like a below 1%, it is huge, okay? And if you look at the percentage of trans and gender non-binary who have seriously contemplated suicide, it is 80%. That's 80% of the population. Now, why is this? Why it is has nothing to do with being trans or gender non-binary. What it has to do with trying to fit these things into a society that's ill-prepared for them. Which is why I think it's also very important for the schools and for the kids. We have to make our world more friendly in terms of, we have kids that we're sending out into a very dangerous world. So the suicide rates are very high. If we look at the suicide rate, attempt rate for individuals, for kids who do not have parental support, it's about 54%. For kids who do have parental support, it's about 4%. Wow. That is the reason for parents to be supportive. I have parents who say, I want my child to be alive and happy. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. You can do that. Support your child. Support your child through the process. So suicide is a big issue. And it's, when we look at the Transgender Day of Remembrance, we're looking at murders occurring from outside. But trans people are most at risk from themselves, self-harm. So that moved me 2 years ago to do the first annual Northern Virginia Interfaith Service for those who have died by suicide. Because suicide is, again, something we don't want to talk about. When somebody dies by suicide, they're often put in the paper, they died unexpectedly.
Right.
We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about the conditions under which it happened. There are churches that won't even do funerals for individuals who have committed suicide, and that's horrible.
It is. And when we come back from this break, we are going to talk about the fact that your church is welcoming. So please join us after this break.
You made your house a reality. Homeschooling yourself on loans, color-coding listings, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. If you can ace house hunting, you can do it for retirement. Get on track with tips at aceyourretirement.org.
Queen is just my everything.
His smile did it. His smile, his eyes, his knowledge. My landlord, he decided that he wanted me to move based on the fact that I was transgender. Let's just respect people in everyday life for just being human.
Listen, I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you judge me for having a problem. No one is going to know that I need help. I need help. I know that no one is going to judge me for having a problem. I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you listen.
Open road
Here comes the Heffley family.
Whether it's a short trip or a long haul.
Estimated time, 47 hours.
They will beg.
You're hungry? I'm happy to provide.
They will plead.
Deep fried butter on a stick.
But whatever you do, don't wimp out.
Now you're talking.
Make them buckle up.
He can't hurt.
Remember, safety first. Cheese curls second.
Are you orange?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. This is our Christmas Eve show, and I am talking with the Reverend Emma Chattin of the Metropolitan Community Church. Thank you so much for being here and for really touching on this interfaith service that you have to acknowledge people who have died by suicide, because so many churches, including the Episcopal Church, often will not do services for people who've committed suicide.
Exactly, and these are things that people don't talk about. We need to talk about them, and that's very important. So I began looking at that in the trans community, but it occurred to me that we have several communities in which suicide is endemic. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring these communities together, because these are common places where we can work on together. So in the service, I had an individual who was a veteran. The suicide rate for veterans is horrible. Something like 23 individuals a day. And so we had a veteran talk about that. Then we had somebody who suffers chronic illness talk about the suicide rate in the community of chronic illness. We had a deputy from the Sheriff's Department come and talk about the stressors that police face and the suicide rate among police, and a first responder as well. So we brought all these communities together that share this common problem to begin to work on it together, because we got to start talking about it. And that's the thing, because you have communities even within law enforcement where the law enforcement deputy would say, if we begin to talk about this, then we fear that we might lose our jobs. We have soldiers who fear also. And these are areas that we do need to talk about. So this service actually begins to expose that, brings communities together, and gives us an opportunity to remember those which some people would sooner forget.
You know, and there is so many stigmas around so many things. Suicide is one of them. You know, this is kind of how we ended up in the opioid crisis too, is because nobody would acknowledge the fact that it was happening in every neighborhood and every subdivision in Middle America. And so we have to kind of talk about the fact that we have a population of people who live among us. And, you know, and I think this is a great theme for Christmas, quite frankly, is to think about how we can be more welcoming in our own lives, in our own neighborhoods, in our own workplaces, how we are looking out for children who should be supported and welcomed and nurtured, you know, and given opportunities to have a happy, healthy life so that they are not at risk of things like suicide.
Exactly.
So to me, what we need to be thinking about is we think about why we celebrate Christmas. I love the fact that you're like, incarnation is not 2,000 years ago. It's now.
It is.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it is now. We, in terms of giving birth to the divine now, here, being the hands and feet of Christ in this world, or God in this world, it is up to us. Christmas, in terms of celebrating, yes, we do things and we makes us feel good. But Christmas is that celebration of us birthing the divine into this world through us and through our actions. If we spend our time arguing about Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, we have just become divided and distracted. While we do that, people are hungry, people are starved. I don't care what you call it, okay? I'm happy that somebody calls it something. But let's not make that an argument, because that's just distracting. So that's what, to me, the holiday is about, and it is a year-round thing. To me, that's part of the beauty in terms of my faith tradition, or looking at Christianity, looking at bringing the incarnation, bringing God into this world, birthing God into this world on tiny little baby feet with a peasant couple halfway around the world. We look at how God entered the world and who slept in an animal trough. Okay, I mean that's a beautiful story. That's how God enters our hearts. We think about that. Do we think there's no room for you in my heart? There's no room. No, there's a little manger in my heart here. You can come here into this little stable in my heart. That's where God begins. That's where God begins to come out through the hands and feet.
You know, and I like that imagery, a little manger in your heart, but it needs to be there for all the little children. You know, and transgender children are not to be feared or stigmatized or marginalized or put in danger.
We are all images of the divine. We are all images of the divine. Every single one of us is a walking, talking miracle. And sometimes we tend to associate with those that are like us, and we forget the other. And we have to look around. That's one of the things, I tend to follow feminist theology, and that's one of the things that feminist theology does. It looks around the table and says, who are we missing?
Yes.
Who's not here? Who's not at the table? How do we get them to the table? How do we feed them? What are their issues? So that's the important thing, and to me that's the beauty of theology. That's why I got involved.
And I think you are at a great intersection of bringing your religious mission to a community that needs support and greater understanding. And you've been very active in reaching out and collaborating and helping people to understand how to help everybody in their community. I really don't think that people mean to intentionally be cruel. I think a lot of times cruelty comes from ignorance, true ignorance of not understanding, or a fear because you don't understand. And so going forward, how can people in their workplace, in their neighborhood, in their child's school, what are some of the ways in which people can help bring understanding?
There's a lot of ways. We need to open up conversations. We need to be more visible. We need to connect with people. One of the things that really struck me is that looking around, I'm not aware if Northern Virginia has a LGBTQI community center. I'm not clear that Fairfax has one. I'm not clear that Fairfax City has one. We need to have one. That's one of the things that's my dream, that's gotten birthed this holiday season. That's my little child in the manger.
You know, that's so interesting because Roanoke has a diversity center and so does Richmond.
They do.
Roanoke and Richmond.
And we don't. Or if we do, I don't know about it, and I want somebody to contact me because I want to be there.
Wow.
Okay, so, but in the meantime, de facto, MCC Nova has become that community center. We loan our space to PFLAG groups, to all the trans groups that meet, to GLBT groups that don't have a space to meet. So de facto, we've become that community center, but I want to have something bigger. I want to have something bigger than that. And in the past, what we've seen is the gay and lesbian community form a community center and then let the trans community have space in it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have the trans community form a community center,
right,
and then let the other groups have space in it.
Right.
So in fact, it would be more like a TBGL community center.
So since I'm always saying that we should not engage in jargon without explaining it, explain that this community is not monolithic. That's why there's so many letters.
Absolutely.
So tell
Gay,
us what all...
lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, intersexed, queer, and questioning. And if you want to use a word that's very broad, which I use frequently, it's queer. And queer actually covers individuals who are not gay, who are straight in the community, but become allies, because that's queer.
Right.
And we need to broaden the use of that word queer, and it becomes almost like a badge.
Right, because queer at one point was used as a very derogatory,
epithet.
Very derogatory term. But now we use queer in a very different way, to say unusual. Extraordinary, actually.
Exactly. And there's also queer theology. And what queer theology also means is that we turn the things on their head. We turn them around. Actually, if you look at some of the origins of the word queer, it comes from tekiri, which means to twist. And that's kind of, if we're looking at things the way they are, we have to turn them around and look at them differently. That's what queer theology does.
And that is something that, like you said, people can be allies. You know, and when I joined the board of Equality Virginia, and I think that was 2011, you know, I was a straight ally to that community. And I think it's important for allies to help to use our power to open up pathways and opportunities for the community to speak for themselves. You know, that's what you can do as allies. That's what allies need to say, look around and say, what is my opportunity? What is my power? What is my ability to open up a pathway, a discussion, a conversation for this community to come and speak?
We need your voices. That's the bottom line. We can't do this. We can't move this all on our own. It needs the lever of many people to do that, to dent the universe. And that's part of the reason also when I see this, when I work with trans kids, their parents actually become huge allies. and still continue after their kids have transitioned, gone off to college. They're still allies, passionate and advocates. Those are the individuals that we need as well to begin to move others.
Elizabeth Fogarty, who is in Arlington, I love Elizabeth. Who doesn't love Elizabeth? She's on the board of Equality Virginia, and she was active in POFEV, People of Faith for Equality in Virginia, and in PFLAG. She was a PFLAG mom. And PFLAG is another one of those organizations too that is a haven for parents who want to find other parents to, you know, as you said, people don't want to be alone. It's very isolating to think that you have a child who needs help and you don't have information and you don't have resources and you don't know where to look for them.
Exactly, and that's one of the things about our organization too. Transgender, we have that in the title. And Elizabeth, we awarded her at our most recent holiday potluck. We gave her an award for being an ally. Also awarded there were Sean Bender-Prouty, who is the first Virginia gender non-binary page in the Virginia Senate. That's a huge deal. We also awarded Alexandra Billings, who is a star of Transparent. And all of them were there to receive the awards. When you think of an organization that can pull those people in and also have them on their advisory board, that's huge. Last year we had Danica Rahm, and we had Gavin Grimm and Robert Rigby. So again, these are individuals that are huge movers. To bring all of those together is exciting for me.
You know, and I want to give a shout out to Danica, who was elected as a delegate.
Yes.
In 2017 in Virginia's House of Delegates, the first elected member of a legislature who is transgender in all of the United States, and elected in Manassas, in Bob Marshall's district. If ever irony were to be writ large, it would certainly have to be that Danica Rahm took that seat from the most homophobic member of the House of Delegates.
If it were a screenplay, it would get failed because people would say that could never happen.
It's unbelievable.
But what brought tears to my eyes was when a newspaper reporter, seeing that opening, said, "So what do you have to say about your opponent?" Trying to get some dirt. And she goes, "Bob Marshall is now my constituent, and I will not say anything bad about any of my constituents." Oh, I wept. I was like, this is what we need in public service. She is where she is for so many reasons.
I know, she'll tell you Route 28.
Yes.
I love that. Every time somebody interviews her, but they want her to say something about being transgender, and she's like, look, it's all about fixing Route 28.
It is.
And I love that about her.
It is.
I love that about her. But she is representing, we have turned a corner in Virginia. I think we have so many reasons. And again, the fact that you and I are natives of a rural southwest part of the state, and here we find ourselves working on these issues and actually gaining traction here in Virginia. It makes me very hopeful that 2019 is going to be a year where we're going to see other accomplishments.
I hope so. And I hope that we can be an inspiration for others.
Well, I think you're an inspiration, Reverend Emma Chattin. And I appreciate you being here and sharing this message of openness and welcoming, because we in the Christian faith use this night, Christmas Eve, to talk about welcoming and
Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday. And to everybody at home, Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday for whatever you may be celebrating. That's it for us here at Inside Scoop.